Good morning and welcome back for day 2. Is everybody all right? Okay. Are you alive out there? So my name is Rose Friedman, and I am the Executive Director of the Civic Standard. If you were not here yesterday, you missed all of it. Sorry. It was great. It was great and perfect. So I'm going to just speak for a few minutes before our first keynote speaker. Many of the conversations that have taken place yesterday and will probably be continuing today center either implicitly or explicitly around the role of data and research in the work that we all do. As a small nonprofit working in and with our town of Hardwick, Vermont, we think a lot about how to gather data in a way that will not disrupt or disturb the individualized authenticity with which we engage. How do we accurately examine the effectiveness of what we are doing? How do we determine if a program is worthwhile to continue? Is it just through tracking participation numbers, stories of engagement? If we are in a real conversation with the town, how do we collect the information and feedback in real time and in a way that is not invasive or clinical, but can inspire real conversation? In our community, which is Hardwick and all the surrounding towns, there is a long history of gathering data on community opinions and priorities, usually through surveys, sometimes with prizes or free pizza as an incentive. These efforts have mostly come from organizations and nonprofits seeking to gather information on where to focus funding and resources, like how the library expansion should be designed, or how the school district should consider consolidating its campuses, or how federal relief dollars should be directed. The problem with these surveys and questionnaires is that the majority of people in our community feel disconnected from both the process and result of this effort. They feel that there is literally no point in spending the time answering the questions because their true interests and beliefs are not necessarily represented in the questions to begin with, or they have serious doubts that their opinions will ever actually be considered. For many people, they aren't even sure what services or programs these organizations offer or how they would engage in the first place. A gap widens here between those with the power to affect change, whether as a municipality, a state agency, or a nonprofit, and those who live and work in the community. The survey makers feel that they have done their due diligence, in fact, their most creative and best effort to include all the voices in the community, and yet nobody will fill out the survey. If they care so much, why don't they respond? The feeling then becomes vague resentment and distrust on one side and frustration and irritation on the other. This gap, this mutual misunderstanding of purpose and intention extends to many aspects of civic life and community engagement from where we stand. So what is the alternative? We believe that it is active and constant listening. It is just paying attention. That means allowing time for conversations in the line at the grocery store, eavesdropping at the bar, asking questions, and taking in the multitude of perspectives and truths held within each community, no matter how seemingly small. Specifics, one person's experience, or a seemingly random anecdote are often the keys to answering the big questions. And we believe in the value found in this non-scientific form of data collection. This is actually traditional human-scale research, paying attention, experimenting, including, conversing. We are not seeking information in order to write papers. We are trying to respond in real time to what we are learning. We use this data in order to develop programs, to amplify ideas, and create new opportunities and resources. We are actively grappling with the different voices in the community and the way they disagree with each other. That is how we grow and change. It is constant. I'm going to tell you a very brief story about one program and how we used our particular form of data and research to inform it. We saw that there were a few kids in town who were riding their skateboards down Main Street. And we saw that there were a lot of really angry drivers who were interacting with those kids. There was no other place for them to skateboard that would have any flow. There was no paved area or any hills where they could skateboard, so they would just take to the streets. And when they did, they would inevitably come into contact with a car and cause a tremendous amount of tension and sometimes a near fatal accident. So they were being yelled at all the time, they were being scolded, they were being talked about all around town. These were kids that we saw going up and down Main Street, and we didn't know how we could get them into the building and how we could get them to come to a concert or a meal or a program that we were doing. They were just not interested. So we thought maybe there's something that we could do that would interest them. What is the thing that they would undeniably have to come to, that they wouldn't be able to resist? So obviously, we saw what they were interested in, what they were doing, and we recognized what they wanted to do was skateboard. While we couldn't offer them a space to skateboard inside the building, we could talk about skateboarding. So we said, hey, we want to get together and talk about building a skate park in town. Do you want to come and talk to us about it? So then they came. I will say that I had already tricked them into coming to the building once by offering them candy. That's not something that I promote as a way to engage with your community, offering free candy to children, but it is a useful thing to have food and treats on hand if you have people who are a little bit shy and not sure how to engage. So they came in, there was food, there were snacks, and we talked about how we could get a skate park built in town. We set up what we called the skate park committee. And then we talked a little bit about forms of organizations and how people get together and plan things, and I introduced the idea of a collective, which of course they were smitten by because shared power and all that. So we started having meetings of the skate park collective. This picture is in our living room on Main Street. Our town manager was invited to this particular meeting and was talking to the kids about some different places in town that might be a good fit. So over the last year or so, we've had these meetings, and we're slowly building this power to maybe make something happen. I just want to say that this is not a game for us. It's not like an exercise, an educational exercise, but nor are we surging ahead with it without them. So we're moving at the speed that these kids are able to move at as they're learning how to organize. So it's a slow-moving train. But the idea is that we're all on it together. So around this time that we started getting pretty heavy into the collective organizing, and we started selling sweatshirts with our little logo on them to raise money, to start having a little fund to work with. One of these kids actually reached out to our town manager and asked permission, this is a pretty amazing thing to ask permission for, to graffiti under the bridge. Sort of missed the memo about how graffiti is not supposed to be a permission-asking situation, but we thought it was really cool that he did, and the town manager wanted to say yes so much because it was such a beautiful thing that he even thought to ask. So he said, yes, why don't you just graffiti under the bridge where there's some kind of offensive graffiti that's been sitting there for a while that needed to be cleaned up, you can just cover that over. And then he called us and said, hey, could you actually take those boys in the collective and get them some spray paint? And we said, sure, no problem. This is all gonna go really well, I think. So we took them to the hardware store and we bought them spray paint. And then we brought them back to the bridge and we set them up to spray paint under the bridge. And there was some clear definitions. You can't go out from under the bridge. It's gotta just stay right here. You're just covering up the stuff that already exists. And no genitalia, let's say. We'll just say it like that. So we took them back under the bridge, and they did their thing, and they did their special tags, and they drew a frog, and it was all very wonderful. And then over the next few days and weeks, we started to notice that it was leaking out. There was like graffiti in more places around town. But we had used up all the paint we had bought, and the boys were like, it's not me, it's not me. And they were also, some of them were like offensive things written about the boys who had been brought under the bridge. So it was a little unclear. It was hard to track what was going on. But the conversation became something really different. People in town were upset, and then they heard that the town manager had actually given permission, and so then they were mad at the town manager. And in all of that conversation, we were continuing to talk to this group of kids. And so now we're engaged in this one thread, which is the skate park, and in this other thread, which is the graffiti. and we're gonna figure out together how to solve this graffiti problem. Are we gonna cover it up? Are we gonna clean it up? So these are programs that we didn't intend to develop, but are now on their own path and journey, and we don't know when they're gonna end, and they're gonna keep going. So we see our work as a bridge between these different things. There's the culture making, program planning that we do, and then there's the just responding to what comes at us, like a call from the town manager asking us to buy spray paint. Our aim in much of what we do is to have fun and to create situations in which people of all backgrounds can experience the joy of being together. And this is a concept that seems more reserved for private gatherings than the public sphere these days. But our aim is also, in addition to the fun, is this response. And sometimes it's response that's fun and easy like this, and sometimes it's real crisis response. The stakes are real. And these two strands, joy and helpfulness, both informed by active and authentic listening, are, we believe, what true community building must be made from. And of course, that work never reaches completion. It's never finished. So taking that old-fashioned small-town form of mutual aid and cultural organizing, we aim to combine it with something that's never been seen before, a place that can answer to the troubles and dreams of this particular moment. So these boys in town are sort of a perfect example of people who have been historically ignored by things like cultural organizations, right? They don't show up to shows, so they don't come. They're not specially invited. They are allowed to be there, but if they don't come, we're not gonna reach out to them. But our organization says, why are they not coming, and what can we do to get them there? Those two things, making this show, making this event that anybody can come to, and then making the special invitation and actually changing the program we do to suit the audience that's in front of us is where the center of our work is. We feel we need both the traditional, the quilting bee, and the new, the crisis response, the Narcan trainings, to breathe new life into the authentic traditions of our places. And we also need to find the answers together to the horrors of this particular moment. We need these two hands to hold each other, the new and the old, culture and crisis braided together. People suffering addiction in our small towns deserve access to art and traditional knowledge as much as anyone. And everyone is better off by knowing everyone else. So we haven't figured it all out yet. I'll let you know when we do. And I'll be back again to talk a little bit more about our work, but now I have the great honor of introducing our first keynote speaker of the day, Senator Peter Welch, who's in the building, he's here, has been a champion for working Vermonters throughout his career. Since his election to the House of Representatives in 2006, he has been widely recognized as a thoughtful and effective legislator who chooses governing over gridlock. Senator Welch is also a champion for rural development across the United States. I myself have seen him walking down Main Street in Hardwick, so I can attest to that. And he chairs the Subcommittee on Rural Development and Energy in the Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry. Please join me in welcoming Senator Peter Welch.
Thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here, and I loved that story about Hardwick. I was in Hardwick just a little while ago. We made a return trip after the incredible floods of a year ago, right around this time of year, just July. And it was heartbreaking to be there right after. There was the inn by the river. I don't know if any of you have been to Hardwick, but the river literally changed course and moved like 100 feet from where its banks were and took down this motel. And this motel was the dream of a couple that moved up from Massachusetts, and they were turning it into a community resource. And it was just astonishing to just see hopes and dreams go down the river. I remember the man had these tools. He did a lot of contracting work, and he had tools that were from his father and his grandfather, and they got washed away. And we were there with the FEMA administrator, and we went back. And by the way, you've got a great town manager, a former state police officer who believes in showing up and working and creating trust. But FEMA did help out. That motel's not going to make it back. The folks are relocated. They're doing good, although it's a heartache to lose what you have. But there was a buyout, and now Hardwick is in the process of rebuilding. But that story you were talking about of coming up with different ways about engaging with kids in your community, this is what is so wonderful about the work that RISE is doing. It is such a tribute to Patrick Leahy, who's going to be here later. And my goodness, it's something to look back in all that he's accomplished. And his legacy is these efforts that are being promoted through some of these grants throughout the state. But it's that rural value of taking care of the people in your community and finding a way to do that that I think your story really exemplifies. So this is a tremendous opportunity here with these grants and the wonderful group of people here, all of whom are welded together by a commitment to rural values. And that's helping your neighbor, it's figuring out how to solve a problem, it's finding a creative way to do it. It's taking yes for an answer, but not no. So it's really important work that you're doing, and it's really, on a personal level, I just want to thank Patrick Leahy. I also want to recognize the president of UVM who is here, and Suresh Garamella, thank you so much for all the effort that you and the University of Vermont put into its commitment to rural life and our agricultural economy as well. That's also extremely important. You know, a lot of what we're doing here with research in education and economics, and we have the undersecretary who's going to be speaking to us soon. But we have a real situation with climate change. We have a real situation with the erosion of the strength of rural communities. We have a real commitment to addressing climate change. We have a real commitment to strengthening our rural communities and what it means, for instance, for these young kids who have a sense of place, a sense of belonging, a sense of opportunity. And here's why your work is so important. This whole debate, you know, I'm here from Washington, and the question I get is, Peter, how do you deal with it, right? Because it is pretty amazing as a spectacle to watch. But for the first time, this debate about climate change, we won a major victory with the bipartisan infrastructure law and with the Inflation Reduction Act. And the reason we did, it's the first time that with the public policy, there were policies and then tax incentives and some direct appropriations that had as their goal unleashing activity to bring down carbon emissions. That's really important. And it overcame a lot of years of denial about the existence of climate change. And that denial was led by many of my colleagues who included some of the best minds of the 16th century. But we won. We won that fight. But not completely, because what that has allowed is a dynamic in the market economy that is starting to focus on practical ways and affordable ways to bring down carbon emissions. And what hangs in the balance with your work is, can you use research? Can you use science? Can you use economic principles to come up with practical ways that help us have an agricultural economy that produces more food and reduces carbon emissions? Can we come up with, through science, with practical ways to bring down the cost so that the things that people need are affordable? Because there is one thing that we do in Congress, and that's the policy and the tax incentives. And that's a major accomplishment that that's been done. But the really hard work now is to implement practical steps to address these challenges that we have. And it's not just in rural communities, but that's where the activities of the university, of research and education, are so profoundly important. Because at the end of the day, unless the steps we take to bring down carbon emissions are affordable for everyday Vermonters, where it's a practical option for a family to figure out how to get a higher mileage car or an electric vehicle, or it's practical to be able to afford those more nutritious food products that are so essential to the well-being of our kids and all of us, really. Those are scientific breakthroughs, education breakthroughs, and that's the work that has to continue. This is about implementation and getting products that are essential to our well-being, mechanisms by which we rebuild where we've had the ravages of floods into a more resilient future that takes into account the inevitability that we're going to have more Irenes, we're going to have more Julys of 2023. So this is very, very, very important. And that's why I'm thrilled to be here. And that's why I also think that it's so important that we have from the Department of Agriculture, USDA, the lead scientist, who has 2,000 scientists, Ph.D.s, working under her. That's, I think, more than we may have at UVM. And Shawanda, it's wonderful to have you here. You're going to be up here speaking in a minute. So I want to thank everybody for being here. I want to end by just my final acknowledgement for Senator Leahy, who set in motion through his years of service for us in Vermont, and also as part of that, the chairman of the Agriculture Committee, to which he was devoted for his 48 years in the Senate, and I now continue to serve on the Agriculture Committee. So good luck to you today in your efforts, and I am going to be succeeded here on the platform by our Provost. And you've been here how many years? We'll say a few years. And I want to just wish all of you a very, very good conference. And I also, before going, just want to thank Dr. Jacobs-Young for being here. And it's going to be, we're honored here in Vermont to have you. And now, Provost, please come up and welcome to UVM. How are you?
I'm good. Hi, I'm Patty Prelock, Provost and Senior Vice President here at the University of Vermont, and I'm originally from the Midwest, but I have been in Vermont for many years. Never wanted to come here, and then I came and fell in love with the place and the people. So thank you for that. And thank you, Senator, for your leadership. And I'm delighted to welcome our guests today. And before I share a few words about introducing our amazing keynote speaker, I do want to thank Tricia Coates and her entire team for an amazing 2 days. Patricia, yesterday I left inspired and excited about the partnerships that are in place, and also the work that has been done, the work that still needs to be done, and the placemaking that should and can occur here in Vermont and across the world. And so it's very appropriate in my talk about planetary health today. So for almost 2 years, the University of Vermont community has been discussing and refining a new planetary health initiative. For us, human well-being is inextricably linked with the health of the environment. The UVM Planetary Health Initiative really explores the connections and inspires actions between what happens with both people and the planet, much of what Senator Welch was talking about. The framing of planetary health here at the university helps us align with our university's new brand position, which describes who we are, and I quote, "We are, for individuals committed to a thriving future for people and planet, UVM is the leading university where discovery, creativity, community, and action coalesce to secure a healthier and greener tomorrow." And after yesterday, I can only see this is going to happen with our community partnerships and the places that they're making. This year's theme for the RISE Summit, with a focus on placemaking, aligns well with our university-wide planetary health initiative. You know, when you think about placemaking, it really inspires people to reimagine and reinvent those spaces in the heart of the community, promoting creativity, and much like what Rose Friedman has talked about in Hardwick, and attending to the cultural, physical, and social identities of the people. Ultimately, the goal is to ensure the health, well-being, and happiness of a community and the environmental context in which that community can thrive. So, having a thriving, healthy community that capitalizes on the assets of that community, oftentimes the environment, is exactly what the Planetary Health Initiative at UVM emphasizes. It's guided by several cross-cutting principles, such as understanding the complex changes and relationships between environmental change and human health, identifying practices to protect and improve population health across the globe. It involves engaging disciplines and stakeholders in solving complex problems and recognizing the impact of equity, bias, and resilience and the impact they have on environmental change and health. And certainly developing global citizens, which is a call to action for us here at the university, where we will help define the principles of protecting our future. And certainly understanding our history to problem solve our current challenges. So the Planetary Health Initiative really recognizes the influence of people on environmental change. It also helps us think about the influence of the environment on the health of the people, whether that is direct or indirect. And we're trying to take a positive framework here. There are things that you can do to take care of your health, which will help the environment, and there are things about the environment that can help with your health, as opposed to always thinking we're in a global traumatic event. So you might ask, why do we have planetary health at UVM, and why now? So we believe we can and must take a leadership role in the planetary health field, setting really ambitious goals and creating a long-term vision and demonstrating our institutional will and courage to drive meaningful change. The centers and institutes shown here illustrate the tremendous synergistic connections that have already been initiated across our campus that facilitate the interconnections we're looking for. So from the Gund Institute to the Osher Center for Integrative Health to the Institute for Agroecology, the Water, the Energy Center, we find ourselves at an inflection point to move our intentions to really improve the health of our community while really ensuring the environment continues to thrive. The Planetary Health Initiative also aligns well with the university's existing strengths, our values, and our identities, shaping the university's image, attracting students, and highlighting our curriculum that is already steeped in environmental health and social justice principles. It has the potential to address the challenges of Vermont's rural context and integrating community perspectives in research and education, something Senator Welch also spoke to. And it was also highlighted in several of the panels yesterday and in our keynote talks. It's an opportunity for us to address sustainability issues, promote environmental justice, and advance social and cultural prosperity. So further, it is inclusive of various stakeholders, and we heard that all through the day yesterday. You must go to your community and engage them. And it's accessible and relatable to a wide range of people. So the University of Vermont has strengths in research, education, clinical, outreach, and policy work for building healthy environments and healthy societies with both a rural and a global focus. Organizing and leveraging our activities around this theme, we believe, will further distinguish the University of Vermont. It will position us for continued success and will help us sustain our research goals. It also creates placemaking opportunities in planetary health with our local and statewide communities. Here are some examples of the specific planetary health research and scholarship activities, as well as some of our educational efforts and policy and outreach activities that have been occurring organically over the last 18 months. I won't speak to all of them, but I thought I would just highlight a few of those. We, in our research and funding related activities, we are sharing our knowledge creation in the area of planetary health with a new Diamond Open Access Journal for Planetary Health as part of the newly launched UVM Press. We're working with the Planetary Health Alliance of Johns Hopkins University to ensure we share high-quality research across the world to share a positive trajectory for making a difference for our people and planet. We will be working with our newly funded Community Schools project to empower elementary school children to take charge of their health and their environment in planetary health projects. You're going to be hearing more about this in a panel discussion later today. And as you know, community schools really emphasize experiential learning, schools as community centers, and co-location of services for students, families, and the community. The linkage between human health and the health of place can be nurtured and sustained through community schools, as schools are the primary context for positive youth development, early exposure to STEM education, engagement with place and place-based learning. And certainly family engagement and provision of school meals and school health services. For example, our community schools are directly interacting with their local food systems, increasing food security for families and growing their own food, and making healthy meals, knowing they can take charge of their health and at the same time protect the health of their environment. In the educational area, we have a new course in planetary health in our Patrick Leahy Honors College and in our new master's degree early entry program in nursing this fall. Currently, UVM has 32 undergraduate majors, 26 minors, 23 master's degrees, 22 doctoral degrees, and 12 certificates of graduate study alone that have coursework in planetary health and are helping to prepare our students to be global leaders in addressing the challenges and opportunities for supporting people and planet. And in the policy and outreach area, we have a new university-wide inclusive excellence action plan built on distinctive areas of excellence in health equity, equitable community resilience, environmental equity, justice, and inclusion, sustainable food systems with equitable access to healthy food, and inclusion towards innovation in complex systems, and certainly a value-based leadership aligned with our common ground values. As well, we have a comprehensive sustainability plan with 4 primary themes, including decarbonization, operations, governance, and people, and research and learning. So, although the university is already heavily invested in our planetary health activities across academic and administrative units, there are some new investments being made to capitalize on the synergies that we have occurring with focused faculty hires and postdoctoral hires in planetary health, as well as seed funding that we just announced for interdisciplinary teams that have co-leads in the health realm and the environment realm so they can really work towards the intersection of health and the environment. And we also have student funding that will be announced in October for community projects on planetary health, and they actually have come to me and said, we have all kinds of ideas about how we can change things in our community and in the surrounding community. All of these efforts engage the principles of and values of placemaking. I'm confident that all our interested faculty, staff, and students and community members will be able to find a point of connection with our Planetary Health Initiative, advancing our scholarly distinction while working to improve the health and well-being of our communities. I would like to invite our local and statewide community partners and all of you here with us today to join the UVM community to build a community space that highlights our shared values in planetary health. Specifically, please join us on October 16th and 17th when we formally launch our UVM Planetary Health Initiative as part of the Osher Center Planetary Health Summit. We're 11 of the Osher centers, there are 11 in the world, that are all coming to UVM to share their perspectives on how to really support the intersection between health and the environment. And we would love to have you there to support a healthier community. So thank you very much.